Everyone. Hope you're all doing good, and I'm very excited to welcome you all once again to the event IWCON. So this session is brought to you by our sponsors, Yes We Hack, Patch Chain, Zero Point Security, Saptang Labs, and our community partners. So now for this session, I have Phillip Wylie, who is a hacker in residence at CyCognito, also the podcast host called The Hacker Factory, and he's going to talk us about API security through external attack surface management. So many of you might have already known him from his Twitter. So he has already 40K followers on Twitter. So I'm sure you guys must have already known him by the work he has already done. So also, guys, Philip will be taking Q&A once he ends the session. So any questions you have, please drop in post in the Q&A session. Also, you can just tag us, take screenshots and tag us on Twitter at Infosec.com to win the giveaways. So, Philip, so welcome
Thanks,
to the
Bree.
event. We are super excited to have you and looking forward
Thank
to
you.
your talk.
It's an honor, and I'm excited to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
Yes, thank you.
Very cool. Thank
Yes,
you.
I'm going backstage.
Okay, yeah, it's good to see some familiar names out there. Good to see you there, Lucy. Thanks for coming and supporting my talk today. Thank you, everyone, for joining. This is my last presentation of the year. I think I actually presented in person 14 times. Not as many times virtual this year since so many things are back in person, but awesome. I really like the content that InfoSec write-ups produces and just what they're doing for the community. It's an honor to be involved today. And so my talk is about using API security to secure your external attack surface management, your external attack surface. So for those of you that don't know of me, I have my CISSP, OSCP, and SANS web application pen testing certification. I'm an offensive cyber security professional and instructor. I taught at a college for almost 4 years. I still teach workshops for different conferences. My current role is hacker in residence at CyCognito, so I do evangelism there as well as I'm the internal pen tester. I started out on the marketing team until we started a internal security team. So I test our application and our internal IT resources. So I used to teach at Dallas College. So this is really what got me passionate about teaching and mentoring. I'm the concept creator and co-author of the Pen Tester Blueprint, starting a career as an ethical hacker. This book came out of my experiences and a lecture I gave each semester to my students on becoming a pen tester. There's a lot of great books on pen testing out there that teach you pen testing, but usually these are, the industry's kind of shifted. Most people back when I was getting started in pen testing were working in IT or cybersecurity, and now you have people that these are brand new opportunities. People are coming in directly from college or not even started college yet, want to get into cybersecurity. So this book is great on showing you what all you need to know to start learning to be a pen tester. And also, I was in the Tribe of Hackers Red Team book, and as mentioned, I have a podcast called the Hacker Factory Podcast. I have different people sharing their stories of how they got started and their advice for others to get started. Some of the notable people I've had on there is IPSEC, John Hammond, the Cyber Mentor, and let's see, also Jason Haddix. I've also got Alyssa Knight, Dave Kennedy. So let's get to the topic at hand. So the agenda, we're going to define attack surface management, why prioritizing external attack surface management, also known as EASM. It's become very popular this year. It's been one of those things that's been out there for a while, but the industry is kind of evolving and the awareness has as well. So discovering your attack surface API pen testing and tools, addressing the gaps in external attack surface management, and references and resources. So attack surface management. So we need to understand what attack surface management is first. So the definition by NIST is the set of points on a boundary of a system element, or an environment where an attacker can try to enter, cause and effect on, or extract data from that system element, or environment. And so attack surfaces can be simplified as attack vectors. So attack vectors in your environment. This could be cloud, this could be on-prem, and as far as attack surfaces, this could be internal too. There's insider threats. Why is attack surface management important? It's hard to assess or secure what you don't know about. So we need to know about these things before we can protect them, before we can assess them. And penetration testing once or twice a year is not enough. The threat actors don't give up. They're constantly working. We have holidays that we get to take off from work. There's always the IR people. Someone's always typically on call with organizations, but the attackers, they don't take time off either. So, during the holidays while we're enjoying time off with our families and loved ones, they're still working. So we need to make sure we know what all is out there. Make sure that we are aware of the vulnerabilities, and we have to do something between those pen tests. We can't just depend on those pen tests. So reoccurring vulnerability scans are not enough. It just doesn't do enough, go into enough detail. And kind of a quote I ran across a while back from, I think it was maybe CISA, that said 50% of the exploited vulnerabilities are exploited within 48 hours of a 0-day exploit being released. And then another interesting quote that I've seen that is the fact that not all these have to be criticals to be exploited. So attack surface management assesses security from a threat actor perspective. So it addresses both internal and external facing systems. Both are very important and both should be addressed, but our focus is the external attack surface management. And so why are we focusing on external attack surface management? Because it's more easy accessible from anyone around the world. Internal attack surface management, people could possibly get connection through Wi-Fi or be internal or use, different types of social engineering methods to get inside the building to get access. But when you're connected to the internet, it just opens up so much more opportunity, and we really have to watch for that. It's, one of the more popular, more used methods of breaching an organization. So traditional tools for attack surface management include vulnerability scanning, vulnerability assessments and penetration testing, red teaming. And when I'm talking about red teaming here, I'm talking about adversary emulation, actual red team operations, purple teaming, and bug bounties. Although purple teaming and bug bounties are newer parts of attack surface management that are really good for managing your external attack surface management, protecting it. Because with a bug bounty, you're doing the same. You're taking the same approach as a threat actor. You've got a lot of people testing one target around the clock. So sometimes time is not a limitation, like on a pen test. So the purple teaming is where you're testing different tools to make sure they can't be executed in that environment. So you could take the tools out of the hands of a threat actor. The more secure you can make your environment. Maybe you can't protect against the nation state, but there's different levels of attackers, just from people that are curious to script kiddies that just have a little bit of knowledge that can run some tools. And so application security and testing integrated into the software development lifecycle is important too. These are some things that have been done. And although, some of these last three topics are kind of a little more new, I mean, it's a lot of companies hadn't really integrated security into their application development process, but they're doing that, and that's good. And you got great resources like OWASP that is sharing how to do that. So traditional gaps. So compliance-based penetration testing has affected the industry as far as pen tests. It's done a couple things. It's done brought awareness to having pen tests done. Before compliance-based pen testing came about, a lot of companies weren't doing pen tests. It's a budget thing. They're spending money in other areas. And a lot of times it was a matter of not being aware that a penetration test needed to be conducted. But then for compliance purposes, especially in the US, one of the big drivers was PCI DSS. And when I first started out as a pen tester, a lot of our pen tests were because of PCI. And what happened there is this narrowed the scope. Certain types of testing was left out of the environment. They're doing the bare minimum to get that checkbox to say we've had a pen test done for PCI not all the environments were done. Whole environments were getting missed. There could be other areas that are not in scope for PCI, but they're critical environments. They have PII in that environment, different critical information, credit card numbers, social security numbers, different government ID numbers and stuff that's important that you don't want to fall in the hand of a threat actor because they can resell these on the dark web. The threat actors over time have thought of better ways to monetize their attacks, ransomware, or just selling data. And so the narrow scope and things being missed has hurt. One of the things too is social engineering. Social engineering on environments will help bring awareness to some of the weaknesses there, and usually that brings about awareness training. And so we need to address that. So time and resource limitations. Companies usually have a limited budget for pen testing, a limited number of resources if they're doing it internally. So it's not getting done. Incomplete and inaccurate asset inventories. This is a big problem internally, but externally, it's a lot more risky to not know what you have externally. And so this has been a problem that's been addressed with certain tools in the industry, like Rumble that HD Moore created was able to find stuff internally, but we still need to focus on the external. Internal, it's easier to find assets internally. Tools like Tenable has a discovery template to do scans to discover different assets in your environment. So it's not as hard to do, but externally, it's a little more difficult. And so why prioritize the external? So external exposed is highly accessible to threat actors. So you don't have to be in that organization. You don't have to be in close proximity. Although, even with some of the high-powered Wi-Fi antennas, someone could be like a mile or so down the road and hack into an organization. But on the internet, it's just there's less difficulty. A lot of times, companies will accidentally expose things that shouldn't be exposed, and this goes beyond APIs, like remote desktop protocol. You don't want to expose that to the internet because this is something that someone's going to come in and try to brute force. Because a lot of cases, companies aren't using multi-factor authentication or using strong passwords, so someone can come in and brute force your RDP connections. Any kind of Microsoft protocols are risky to expose to the internet. Sometimes these accidentally get exposed, so we prioritize the external because we want to make sure that we're not leaking anything that doesn't need to be leaked, not giving the threat actors something that they could use to get a foothold. And so penetration testing once or twice a year is not enough. Most companies do it once a year because of PCI, and that's it. And sometimes it's because they have so many applications, so many environments to test that they're not able to do it more of that. In some cases, they're doing sampling, and they're just basically testing everything in the environment should be configured the same way, right? It should be all the same. So if we test 10%, then that should be good enough. And that's not always the case, because when we're, as professionals, we're configuring firewalls or configuring the servers, our cloud resources. Sometimes there's an update that got made, but it didn't get made across the whole enterprise. So not everything is the same. So sampling the environment through pen test is not good enough. And then reoccurring vulnerability scans are not enough. Not to say you don't do these things, but we need to do more. We need to pen test more often. We need to do more besides just the vulnerability scanning. This is all needed and something that's required, but we want to make sure we need to do something beyond that. And as mentioned, the external attack surface is a lot more attractive to threat actors. So we need to make sure that we're doing things in this environment, these environments, to help that. So addressing the external attack surface management gaps. So the way we're going to do this is we need to define our attack surface. So through external attack surface discovery, we're going to discover the attack surface. We're going to use reconnaissance, including open source intelligence. And one of the gaps to pen testing too is, over the years, the compliance-based pen testing has become the norm. In a lot of cases, a pen tester gets 1,000 IP addresses. That's all they're testing. And this has just kind of been the way things are done. But the thing is, and if any of you have seen Jason Haddock's awesome talk on the bug hunter methodology, he digs deep into reconnaissance OSINT. It's an excellent talk and a lot of inspiration for some of the things I've done and some of the things that have opened my eyes. But the open source intelligence, you can miss things. I did a black box pen test once for a company. I had the physical address because we had to test physical security. So we need to know what building needed to be tested. So that's all we had. So it was up to us to take a threat actor approach, much in the way a malicious hacker would do. And we had to do reconnaissance and OSINT to try to detect any resources. And one of the things during the pen test, all the network blocks I detected, the domain names, I did domain enumeration, had all these items to test, and I did some open source intelligence, and I used Shodan. And so with Shodan, I did some searches on the organization, and sure enough, I found a FTP server connected to the internet. This is clear text authentication. Someone with the time and effort could brute force this and possibly get in, but it was nowhere in the network blocks. And Shodan found this FTP server because the way you have the warning signs, the login banners on websites, even at work, when you're going to log in, it gives you a warning that only those with authorized access are allowed to access this resource. Anyone else will be prosecuted or whatever. That little warning flag, little notification. Shodan found that. It found that in the login for the FTP server. So that's how it knew it was that company's asset. And so when people are doing these pen tests and only testing these 100 or 1,000 IP addresses, they're missing things. So this is one of the things you want to do. And this is one of the things too, looking at Jason Haddock's method for doing bug hunting, is he spends so much time on reconnaissance and OSINT, really digging to find more information. For anyone that's been through the OSCP, this is kind of a lesson there. Going through the OSCP, usually why people fail the exam is they don't do enough digging. They don't do enough, open source intelligence or reconnaissance to really find out all the vulnerabilities there. So this is where the OSINT's very important. So the external attack surface management discovery. So you're going to collect known IP subnets and domain names, and you're going to perform reconnaissance against those. And so we're going to be using things like things like Nmap, vulnerability scanners, some different tools out there like AMAS from the open source web application project created by Jeff Foley, the AMAS tool. So you want to use tools like that to do reconnaissance against those domain names. And so you're wanting to find all the different IPs in that subnet, as well as in those domain names. You're wanting to collect domain names and then look for the subdomains. So you're going to do IP address discovery. We're going to look for autonomous system numbers. We're going to go through regional registrars like Aaron and Ripe, looking for those IP addresses and IP blocks that they belong to those companies. And this is a good thing to do as a pen tester too, to always validate the IPs that you're going to be testing. I've had a pen test before where the customer gave me a list of IP addresses for an external pen test. I went through the pen test and I found some preliminary stuff that was kind of some high risk vulnerabilities. And I sent an email to the customer, and they're saying, those are not our IP addresses. They gave me the wrong IP addresses. So these are some things you want to validate to make sure you've got the correct IPs and scope, that you're not pen testing the wrong organization. So subdomain enumeration tools like Subfinder and AMAS are great tools for that process. And also open source intelligence using Shodan to locate unknown hosts, as well as Spiderfoot, Maltego, and Crunchbase for acquisitions data. And this is from Jason Haddock's talk, the Bug Hunters methodology, which he's updated. I think he's got a recent update within the past year or whatever, but some really great information on doing reconnaissance. And some of these tools like Shodan and Spiderfoot help make your job easier during this process, but some cases you may want to go look at some different resources manually. Sometimes you can find information in Wikipedia that's important for your reconnaissance that you're collecting during that testing. So basically, this is what the steps we're going through to collect. I mean, there's more tools out there that can be done. This is just some of the ones mentioned in Jason's presentation. So reconnaissance scanning. So now we've collected IP addresses, subdomains, and domains. So we're going to do an Nmap scan for live hosts, and we're going to also do port and service scans using Nmap to identify the web resources. So if you're going through an exercise for general external attack surface management, you're wanting to identify all the risky exposed services, ports and services. You want to identify all those. But since our focus is on API, we're wanting to look for web resources because, web resources are where these are going to be hosted on web servers, application servers. So API Endpoint Discovery. So this was taken from Katie Paxton Fear, also known as Insider PhD. Her YouTube video, My API Testing Automated Toolbox. And Katie has a lot of great information in this video. So when I was doing the research for this presentation, which I gave for the first time at Alyssa Knight's API Secure conference back in April, this is one of the resources I came across, which is really great. And for those learning web application pen testing or API pen testing, Katie has some really great resources out there. I actually had the honor to get to meet her in person at Black Hat Europe last week. So some of the tools that she recommends is Kite Runner for RESTful API discovery and Foof, a word-based API discovery tool. And so once we collect find all the APIs, then we're going to test for the vulnerabilities. And this is also a continuation of Katie's video. So we're going to use tools like Authorize. It's a Burp Suite extension for detecting IDOR. And also Logger++, a multi-threaded extension for Burp Suite. And this SQL map is a SQL injection testing tool. This is one of my favorite ones. I found a SQL injection vulnerability one time. I was able to get command line access from the internet through a SQL injection vulnerability. And so NoSQL map is for your NoSQL testing tool. And then JavaScript Web Token testing tool, JWT tool, is another one for the JWT, the Java server web tokens. And then Burp Suite interception proxy for vulnerability and testing. And so other API testing tools is OWASP Zap. It has an Open API add-on, a GraphQL add-on, a SOAP add-on, and you can import files containing URLs through this one add-on. That you can import the files containing URLs. And so this is referenced through Zap Proxy's website on how you can use Zap to scan APIs. And then also there's two different articles. The first one's a little bit newer, the other one's a little bit older one, but really good information if you're using that. And so API vulnerability testing. So using the OWASP API project is a good way to do testing for APIs. And so addressing gaps with EASM. So we want to do continuous discovery. So we want to be continually doing this discovery because our infrastructures are continually expanding. It's like a living thing nowadays. They're very dynamic. With cloud-based assets, it's easy for marketing to spin up a web server to do some marketing campaigns, and then sometimes they don't get taken down. You have problems with shadow IT. Maybe some group needed some type of application. They brought in their own team to build this tool. And so shadow IT has been a big problem, but now with the cloud, it makes it even more critical that we're aware of this because it's so much easier to spin up infrastructure and applications and stuff. So we want to make sure we're continually discovering, continually testing. So your vulnerability scanning, pen testing, and then using some external attack surface management platforms. This you can do manually, but you want to try to skip script to automate things or use, if you are experienced with AI and machine learning, build out ways to automate it that way. And so automation improves scalability and resources, and it improves consistency. A lot of really good bug hunters you see out there have a lot of things automated so they can detect what they need to, and they spend more time with the hacking part, more of the finding bugs. So they're using automation to improve what they're doing, but this also scales what you're doing and improves consistency. A lot of companies are so huge that they got so much assets that it's really hard for them to thoroughly test and monitor their external attack surface. So they need things like automation or external attack surface management platforms. And so we need to make sure that we're remediating timely and completely. I've performed pen tests before, and this goes back to showing about how often you need to be testing. I was doing a pen test for this company, tested in January, came back 90 days later to perform a pen test. They had remediated the highs through mediums, but when I came back, one of the low-level vulnerabilities, there was an exploit for it. So if we hadn't did that 90-day retest, that would have sat there until another year later, and it could have been breached. So this is the importance of remediation. We need to make sure that we're completely remediating everything and stay on top of that. This is a low-level finding. So you may just, have the information, the findings from your pen test reports or your vulnerability scans, and kind of monitor those items. Because if you're doing, continuous vulnerability scanning, you're going to detect these new vulnerabilities. So you need to stay on top of those. And so references for the resources for this talk are, I wrote an article for US Cybersecurity Magazine that you can find a lot of the content from this presentation there. And also the Reconnaissance reference was Jason Haddock's Bug Hunters methodologies I mentioned. And then for the API discovery and pen testing was Katie Paxton Fear. So that's where I got that information. Also, for a really good book is Hacking APIs by Corey Ball. This is a great book. I have this. He's actually put out some free training. Yep, thanks for sharing that. The University API Sec. It's based on that content. He originally released like a YouTube video series during DEF CON this year with that training. So that's a really great book out there. I probably pen tested my first APIs back in 2014 or so, and we didn't have all the great resources that we do now. We have better tools. We have better resources on how to perform pen tests. So I highly recommend Corey's book and then the training out there, which covers a lot of that stuff. And so a really good way to learn. So that concludes my presentation. Feel free to reach out to me. I love mentoring people and helping people out. That's kind of what got me into teaching. Originally, I like to share just different resources, learning resources, and different pen testing resources and so forth. I used to share that a lot. I still do. So I still enjoy doing that. And so feel free to connect with me. I'm happy to answer any questions you have now and later on. So if you come up with something later on, feel free to reach out. I'm always liking to expand my network and meet new people. So thank you.
Thank you, Philip. That was a very insightful talk.
Thank you.
So we have few questions.
Okay.
This is by Bhavesh. He asks, is sensitive data such as passwords and financial information properly encrypted when stored and transmitted through the API?
Not always. Sometimes it's, some cases some cases it might be, in some cases it's not. It's just like any other kind of security configuration. Sometimes it's not always stored properly. But that's a really great point. You need to make sure that those are being transmitted securely and that you've got all the proper security around that API. And so, yeah, it's a great question. But yeah, it's not always transmitted securely. APIs has been really one of those areas where people are starting to find a lot more bugs and vulnerabilities just through APIs. So yeah, this is one area that the security of it hasn't been that well understood for many years, and it's so widely used. But yes, that information is not always encrypted, but it should be.
Okay, the next question is how to test for the API which uses authentication mechanism, and is there any way to bypass this kind of mechanisms?
Yes, it's going to depend on the API, and it's just like any other kind of. There's all sorts of bypasses out there, and it's going to depend on the type of API it is and how it's configured. And so yeah, through this for more detailed information, if you go through that API course, you'll be able to find out that more in detail how to test for authenticated mechanisms and how to bypass different types of secure mechanisms.
So we have one more question by Abhishek. He asks, what are some resources to get started at API security for someone new to this field?
So some of the video I mentioned, like Katie Paxton Fear's video, that would be a good one. She's got a lot of good resources for those starting out because, API security is, more, there's different type of APIs, but what we're talking about here that's popular is the web API. So that's really what you need to work on. So TryHackMe has some good entry level web app pen testing content out there. Rana Khalil has a really great series based on Portswigger's Web Application Security Academy that's free on YouTube that you can learn pen testing and some API pen testing through there. And as mentioned earlier, the book by Corey Ball on hacking APIs. But yeah, the thing I like about the Try Hack Me is it starts out very, very intro level, and you can even learn some details about web app pen testing and stuff before you start learning the API stuff. And also Try Hack Me Academy. I mean, not Try Hack Me, but Hack the Box Academy has a lot of good new content too. And those resources go into the details of how web requests work, how web servers and all that works to help you get a base understanding before you start getting into the API security side of things. And then OWASP is always a good resource on learning about API security and any kind of web application security.
So, hope that answers your question, Abhishek. Also, we have one more question by Gautam. So he says, I love this talk and thanks for sharing the valuable information. My main question is, should a company, crypto exchange, go for regular pen test or open a public bounty program?
I would say both. It's good to have internal pen test and an open bug bounty platform. What I've seen a lot of companies will do first is they'll mature their process internally. So they'll perform some pen test and vulnerability scanning before they open it up publicly, just in case, because when you open up bug bounties, there is the chance that someone could do things maliciously. But I would start with the regular pen tests and then add a public bug bounty program.
Thank you. We have one more question by Prashant. So, firstly, it's a great talk. I enjoyed it. What kind of approach do we have to follow if we have a very low attack surface, like now body, and it's a jet request? Do we have any kind of approach to find hidden palms in the API?
Let's see, hitting. Yeah, hitting parameters usually more on the web form type of in a web page. But one of the things too is I refer back to is the OWASP testing guide. So that's a really good way to learn how to test different web applications. So I would refer there. But yeah, it's when we mentioned some of the things, the low attack surface. I guess you're assuming that it's just really kind of hard to find any vulnerabilities, and that's one of the things that's gotten tougher about pen testing. If you're testing a company or doing a bug bounty against a company that has been having pen tests performed for a while, it can be more difficult to find those bugs and stuff and vulnerabilities. So you really have to do more reconnaissance and dig deep with your reconnaissance to try to find things.
Hope this answers your question, Prashant. So Q&A is done. Thank you, Philip. That was a wonderful talk. We
Thank you.
absolutely loved it. It was very insightful. I hope all the audience have got some valuable information from this. Also, guys, the networking spaces are open until tomorrow, till the end of the event. So you can come around, hang out, make new connections, advertise yourself, and do all that stuff, cool stuff. And also, please take the screenshots and tag us on Twitter at the rate infosec.com. So, and win the giveaways. So we are absolutely, it was my absolute pleasure to host you, Philip. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It was an honor.
Yes,
Thanks
hope
everyone
you
for
also
attending
had
my talk.
a, thank you.